This is Coder Radio, episode 320, recorded July 30th, 2018. Hi, everyone, and welcome into Coder Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show, taking a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and its related technologies. This episode is brought to you by our two great sponsors, Linux Academy and DigitalOcean. I'll tell you more about those great sponsors as your show goes on. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is that wise wizard, for some reason, down in the swamps of Florida. Why, yes, it's our host, Mr. Dominic. Hello, Mike.
In the swamps avoiding the plague, I am.
Yeah. I hope you're on the way to recovery. Are you feeling better? You're not, are you? You're not. I can tell. You're not. Yeah, that's what you get for being a time traveler. You know what? I told you, if you stopped traveling through time, you wouldn't have these issues. Also, if you didn't use the life energy of other people around you to keep you healthy, then you wouldn't also be suffering from this problem. So it's really kind of your own fault. Can't blame the kids if you think about it, Mr. Dominic. Can't blame
Damn vampirism gets me every time.
Yep, that's what happens. So I'm really looking forward to this week's episode because, as you know, I stalk you on Twitter. Not in real life yet, but I do stalk you on Twitter. And you are... you're possessed with the devil, is what I've determined. And you will never be around any of my hardware. You or your offspring, apparently. So not only did you kill a MacBook in the last week, but you also melted a Galago. And I'm really curious how this happened. So it's like, picture the bottom of Mike's Galago, like sort of deformed inwards, right about where I would imagine the base of the trackpad is, like like at the bottom.
It's right under the tree, yeah.
Does it still work, the trackpad? Does it still work?
It does. So... This may be more complicated than my usual. I melted the laptop. I'm not convinced that I actually melted it, or that I melted it first.
Oh,
so
what do you mean?
So when I tweeted that, I had assumed that the deformation there was just heat. But then my wife later on in the day said, "Oh yeah, Reese knocked over your laptop." Reese is my 2-year-old. Knocked over your laptop because, of course, like all good developers, I was coding at our little island bar in the kitchen. So what I think happened, now we're in like true detective mode here. I think he knocked it over, dented it, broke the seal, and then the heat melted some sort of adhesive.
Oh, that's what I'm seeing coming out of it. Okay.
Right, I kept using it, and that's
because it's kind of oozing something white.
It's oozing.
Yeah.
Right, so I think that's what actually happened. It was a team effort, kind of a Batman and Robin situation.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So yeah, I ordered a new Galago because...
Now, I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, what?
What?
What was that?
I didn't say anything. I just, I started twitching. My hand started shaking. I called this number in Colorado, spoke to a guy, and I don't know, I ordered a Galago.
Really? I mean...
Great.
Like, I know.
Yeah.
I know. It is so great. Let's just do it one more time. Really? It's so good.
God damn it.
So I don't understand this purchase. Not that I don't think the Galago is a good machine, but I wouldn't say you have been the biggest fan of your Galago. In fact, it's inspired a couple of other migrations, and you've always gone back, and I was surprised when I heard it. But I know you do have a big fondness for System 76, and you like that business relationship that you have with them. So I grokked
they're making America great again. I had to do it. Sorry.
So, but this is machines. Anyways, I'm just curious on what the rationale was behind it. As I myself am just a few days away from pulling the trigger on my new laptop in a long time.
So I would be curious to see what you get. I made a decision between the show and the last one. I'm giving up on the laptop dream. So the reason I ordered the Galago with the matte screen, just 1080p, not the 3K one. It's 2 models newer than the one I had, so the battery life is better, and it's only 14 inches, although my previous one was 13. The reason for that is real simple. planes are small. And when you travel a lot, you cannot open a 15-inch MacBook Pro on an airplane.
Yeah, I agree.
I also opted for, I think we have the configuration somewhere on Twitter, a pretty modest build. It's 16 gigs with a normal 250 SSD.
Yeah, the drive didn't surprise me, but the 16 gigs kind of did. Although you did go with a pretty decent 4-core CPU.
Yeah, I went with the high CPU. And that's it. So that machine is basically a travel machine.
Yeah.
It's small. It's hopefully the battery life is good.
So you know it's two generations. It's 2 generations of potential improvements there. It sounds like
potential improvements. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's starting to come together now. Yeah, and you're right about the boy. Is that not something I saw? Pretty much the only people successfully using laptops on the plane were MacBook Air users.
Right.
That I saw in the last couple trips. So yeah, I completely agree. Plus, you have been finding Pop! OS to be pretty attractive, right?
Yeah, I'm actually like the Dell I was using as my workstation. I think I mentioned in the last show is running Pop as well, and it's actually running a flight simulator full time with like a trigger and throttle hooked up to test some software I'm writing for a product we're going to be coming out with that integrates with said flight simulator. So the problem with that is that machine is now basically just dedicated for that purpose.
I am dangerously close to pulling the trigger on a Lenovo T480. It's a 14-inch laptop, and the big appeal for me is that, like you, this is a travel machine, and the intention behind it is to be able to do show prep and audio editing while traveling. And also use it as like a remote broadcast machine. We have a system we're using now that is a peer-to-peer WebRTC Opus codec system, but it uses an intense amount of CPU. So it needs to be an i7, and it needs to have Thunderbolt 3, and it needs to have an Ethernet port. Those are my requirements, and it needs to be smaller than a 15-inch laptop. And when I went through that list of full Thunderbolt 3 with USB-C charging, because I have recording stations where I can sit down and it's one USB-C style Thunderbolt cable I plug in, and on the other end of that is the laptop power. It is all of the recording hardware, like a DBX286 interface, and an audio interface, and a, depending on the location, like a headphone amp and things like that are all just one cord that comes into the laptop. And then I can open up Audacity or Reaper on my laptop and record wherever I'm at. And I can open up the Opus P2P system and start chatting with the host. And I just need a system that's powerful enough to do that and can survive for a while on battery. Because one of the things that happens when I'm at remote locations is they have very noisy power. Plus, I want to edit while traveling in a plane.
What do you mean noisy power?
Well, have you ever like tried to record audio and you've heard like a buzzing, like a static sounding buzzing in the background? Like a hissing.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, that is bad power, and it's a lot of times it's like there's like a ground loop problem. It's stuff that doesn't really affect equipment that's not recording equipment, and just the easy button solution is don't plug in. And I know that sounds ridiculous for recording, but some of these laptops, and in the case of this one, it's coming with a 6-cell 72 watt-hour battery that it claims will last a very long time, even under Linux. But on top of that, it also has a built-in 3-cell battery. And they don't call it that. They call it like a power bridge, is what Lenovo calls it. But what it really is an integrated 3-cell battery in the laptop that is non-removable. And then they have a removable 6-cell battery that you can hot swap while using the 3-cell battery. And the 3-cell battery will still give you probably about the power of, maybe just short of what your Galago is going to get, just natively, with the built-in battery. And then you can attach an additional, you can attach more batteries as you need. So that is very appealing to me because that's how I used to use my laptops back in the day when laptops were much more modular. And that was a workflow that did work for me. So I know that would work for me again. Plus you got the 14-inch screen. Plus, you got the built-in Ethernet. Plus, you got the fact that I've been told from a little birdie at Red Hat that this is the machine of choice at Red Hat now. This is what they're deploying for new hires. This is the default Red Hat workstation, which means it's probably going to have great Linux support. So with all of that put together, I've decided that's the machine I'm probably going to pull the trigger on. And I'm just really hungry for a good keyboard too. Like I want a good keyboard again. I think the Galago's got a pretty good one, but just like recently, I just that's something that I just feel like as a tool that I'm using for my job, it needs to be something that's decent. And there's just no excuse. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's good too.
Right. Just, I was thinking about it like because the Galago, like this computer makes a ton of sense. In fact, modular batteries for the win.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like
yeah, and charging over USB-C and still having Ethernet, dude. That's big for me because I'm transferring very large files. These project files are gigs, and doing that over Wi-Fi is brutal.
Yeah, one of the things I liked about even my old Galago was that you don't have to do the dongle. Hey,
yes,
you're going to somebody's like, do you have the dongle for your HDMI thing? Because I need to do this power. Yeah.
The other thing about Ethernet for my line of work and yours too with the podcast is Ethernet is always more reliable than wireless when you're doing live VoIP because it is very susceptible to interruptions. It's very much a real time thing, and so radio dropouts or radio interference can just happen. Especially on a busy Wi-Fi network. That was a big problem I had at Linux Academy is at one point there was like 80 people on the AP I was using. And so I had to go off and get myself a MiFi just to get myself out of that busy Wi-Fi network because the VoIP calls were starting to drop packets. And so an Ethernet connection in the laptop I'll be using to connect back to the studio is vital. And I'd much prefer not to have it hanging off of a dongle. I'd much prefer to have it built in on the PCI bus, actual gigabit, and the whole thing, the laptop, this is the other thing. The laptop starts at $800, and when I'm done, it's going to be around $1,800. It's still cheaper than a MacBook Pro. I'm not saying it's comparable in all the ways, or the build, or the screen, but for the functionality that I need, and for the fact that I want Linux support, to me, this seems like a no-brainer. And then you have the battery swapping on top of it. So that's what I'm thinking about. I haven't pulled the trigger yet, but I'm thinking about the ThinkPad T480 to replace my XPS 13, which it's the reason why I haven't even pulled the trigger on the T480 is because the XPS 13 has been one of the best computers I've ever owned. I paid full price for that machine, own it outright, and I would do it again. It was such a solid, it has been. It's what I've been using on my trips. It's great. It's the perfect size. It's a gorgeous screen. I don't know why not. Everybody should be Infinity displays, but it doesn't have Ethernet. And I was considering like a USB-C dongle, but the truth of the matter is I'd really rather have it built in. And so the battery swap and the Ethernet are putting the T480 over for me. So there you go. That's my hardware thought. So when you mentioned Galago, it kind of tickled something to me because I'm like, maybe I should be considering the Galago again. But I think I'm set on the T480 still.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that looks like a solid choice. I mean, I'm sure the Galago will be fine for me too, but it's interesting. So it seems like we've both internalized we're just going to buy a laptop that's good to travel and like.
Yes, and then my workstation back home at my home office, or it's the studio office, it's not my home. My studio office is where I will probably have like a bigger GPU and 32 gigs of RAM, for example, which is exactly the scenario right now.
Right.
And large screen.
This is all Apple's fault, really.
Yeah, I agree. So when do you get your new hardware?
I don't know. I'm supposed to get it this week. I did the rush assembly because next week I'm traveling.
Oh, really? Where are you going?
North Carolina.
Oh, boy. You and me. We're traveling maniacs these days.
We are.
Do we need to worry about production schedule at all? Or is it...
No, we don't.
Good. I like that.
I leave on Tuesday.
We're getting pretty good at that. You notice? Yeah. Like, we've been traveling and still doing the show. I mean, last week we missed an episode because you were sick. But, that's not because of travel. Well, maybe. But it's not because we were traveling.
No, it's because children are...
monsters.
I don't even know what to say.
Well, I'll mention do.co/coder. Go to do.co/coder to get a $100 credit at DigitalOcean. They have powerful infrastructure with enterprise-grade SSDs that are insanely fast, 40 gigabit connections coming to the hypervisor, data centers all over the world, documentation for days, and a dashboard to die for with an API that does everything the dashboard does with great documentation. DigitalOcean is doing a full-fledged attack on the market here. They're really checking all of the boxes. They have a great system, incredible performance, one-click deployment of applications, and an easy way to get started if you're an expert or a beginner. And I don't say that lightly, because it's one thing to have that as a goal. It's another thing to actually be able to say, if you've been deploying servers for 15 years or if you've never deployed a server, you're going to find things about the dashboard you find intuitive and you like. That's a massive accomplishment. And the reason why I think it's worth drawing attention to is because it means the tools get out of your way. They facilitate your project. Maybe it's the next big thing you're going to put in production. Maybe it's something you want to test. Maybe, like in my case, something I do almost on a weekly basis is I just want to experiment with something for a few hours. Just try something out I've been reading about. I want to get my hands on it so that way when I talk about it in the shows, I've actually tried it. And I get curious. That's my way of playing with computers. I do that more than I game or anything, is I just try stuff out. And with our credit, when you go to do.co/coder, well, you can try stuff out with a $100 credit for 60 days. You could deploy their systems with hundreds of gigs of RAM or massively powerful direct CPUs. There's so many options, but whatever you choose is going to have a 40 gigabit hypervisor connection, SSDs for days that are super fast, enterprise grade, and a dashboard that brings it all together. So get started by going to do.co/coder, and a big thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Coder Radio program, do.co/coder. I was just checking our titles. Chat room slacking. Chat room, you are slacking. I know it's a hot mess in that title board right now, but you need to get in there and you need to get banging. Come on. Coder Radio Show is live, and if you don't title it, then who's gonna? Why else be live? We just do this thing off air, right? That's what I'm saying. So, Mr. Dominic, I've been reviewing the news, and it seems there is still a bit of hype around these blockchain IPOs, these cloud thing. Like there's like these cloud ICOs that they're calling them. There's still a lot of crypto hype around like these shops that come up and say we're going to build blah 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 on blockchain. And like as a thought experiment, if you were to announce today the Mad Botter, and you were to say that Alice is powered by blockchain, you would probably notice a lot of PR interest. As we record right now, the price of Bitcoin is starting to climb back up again. Oh, yay, good. And it's at $8,000. And several companies today announced funding around building technology around Bitcoin payments and blockchain. So you just, got to consider adding blockchain to the Mad Botter, and you could go big.
Yeah, I know. I'm the only guy in the world who I just don't get blockchain still.
It does feel like it's cooled though, right? Like the hype has cooled, right? It's slowed by a pretty, I think, perceivable amount.
Yeah, but I think we're getting to that part of the hype cycle where it's like noun plus blockchain, right? You're going to have a lot of people. I saw something.
I wonder too if we're not in the phase where people are building out their things. And then you'll start seeing announcements like, in a year from now, because, it takes a long time to build software.
It takes a long time to build stuff. Yeah.
Somebody will get their MVP out, and it'll be all built around blockchain. And, you really think of it as a public ledger in a way. And that's where there's interest, is it's one public thing where like IBM and HP could agree on the information that's in that blockchain, because it's like a third-party non-biased ledger that everybody has a copy of. And so the idea is that there's a lot of potential for like business-to-business contracts and other things like that, where you don't have to worry about trust. Like it's a third-party public blockchain where everything's verifiable by crypto. And so everybody just says, okay, yeah, that's a legitimate transaction. We agree. And there's banks looking at this as a way to transfer funds between large financial institutions and things like that might otherwise be competitors. So that's where some of the hype is still, it seems, strong. I know, isn't that weird? Like that's out of all of this talk about like, overthrowing the financial system and all of this.
Right. That's the blockchain talk I remember. It's funny. Well, this because we both were around. There was this... like in the mid 2000s, early 2000s, like all this like anonymous and like, tech pseudo anarchist tech people are going to take over the world hype. And then it just died, or it feels like it just kind of died.
Yeah.
But I have a theory. Do you want to hear my crazy theory? And it relates to blockchain. The tech people took over the world. Unfortunately, the tech person in question is Mark Zuckerberg.
Oh yeah.
It's not our Tux Guy Fawkes mask wearing friends. It's
and he has no interest in it. It would disrupt his.
It would disrupt Yeah.
Yeah, it might be.
I don't know. I mean, one thing I did think would be a cool application for blockchain, and I'm actively soliciting someone who listens to do this for me, please. For some reason, a certain parcel delivery service that is fond of, let's just say, neutral colors, can't seem to get packages to my office on time
That's
or
frustrating.
at all. It would be great to have some sort of blockchain application where I could verify every step that package took.
Yeah.
Right. In every hand and every. Just. Can someone do that?
While we're on that, you know what's driving me crazy? And I think it leads to the assumption that somebody has stolen my packages. Is I think they contract out to these independent delivery people on the weekends, and they sometimes, when they arrive in an entire area or something, I don't know, they mark a package as delivered. And so then the Amazon app sends a push notification to my phone, and I walk out on the porch to go get my package, and there's no package. I have a push notification saying my thing has been delivered, but there's no package. And sometimes it's several hours. Like, I get the push notification at 1 p.m. and it doesn't show up on my porch until 6 p.m. That was the first time, and I almost reported it as lost or stolen. I know it's a weird thing, but it's a small, it's a first world problem, but it feels like something that existing technology could solve. So this started happening. We already had the tools to solve this problem before they started doing this.
So I will find a link for the show notes. Believe it or not, the porch pirates, I'm sure you've heard of this, right? Yeah, where people steal your packages off your porch, basically. It's such a problem in the Tampa area down here that the city of Tampa ended up put up a prize for tech companies, and a couple are participating. I'm not, but to find some sort of solution to this tremendous problem. Apparently, the Tampa police are getting daily calls that someone ordered a laptop or a phone or whatever.
That's why they care.
That's right, and it's costing the city just a ton of money to you got something was stolen. You have to file a police report.
Yeah,
follow up.
This is why Amazon bought Ring. The Ring video doorbell. And how are they ever going to get into anything super valuable if they don't solve this problem? I mean, think about super expensive watches and prescription medication and things like that have a very high value that people started seeing the types of boxes that prescription pills show up in. Amazon just bought an online pharmacy a couple of months ago or a month ago. They have to solve this problem. So I think IoT, the Echo devices, the Ring video doorbells, and all of that are what they're eventually moving towards, where there'll be verifiable deliveries by Amazon, where there'll be video records of the delivery person dropping off the package. And in some cases, you'll even just authorize them to just open the door. They already have a pilot program for that, where you can have a whole system. You have to buy it from Amazon, and the delivery people have what's called the Amazon key, and they can unlock your door and drop off the package. The camera turns on when the door opens. It sends you a clip of it all happening. And of course, the Echo plays a role somehow in this whole thing. They're already experimenting with that in a small pilot program right now. And so it seems to me like they've got to solve this problem, and they're going to try to solve it with software. Just like they're solving the shopping problem. They have two stores. They have one that they already have open, and a second one they're opening here in Seattle, these grocery stores. They're not quite grocery stores, they're like corner stores that you go in and there's no checker. You just grab the stuff off the shelf, and image recognition and facial recognition and RFID and all of that just figures out what you took off the shelf, and then they bill your account. Same problem they're trying to solve there is they're trying to use imaging and RFID and what they know about you and your past purchases to determine your behavior and what you bought, and to make sure, yep, that sounds right. We should be charging them for that. And you never have to go through a line. You never have to check out. And I think they're trying to take that same approach to delivery packages and losing them. They're trying to solve it with software and a bit of hardware, and then knowing about your past performance, how many things you've reported as missing before, the average rates for your neighborhood, and all of that kind of stuff. And then they're gonna suss it all together. And I think that's going to be their attempt to control this whole thing. And they'll probably eventually have Amazon delivery. That's just a Amazon branded delivery company. That's the future.
Drones. Let's not forget the drones.
Yeah, right. Or just they could drop them just from orbit in one of the Bezos rockets.
Bezos. So is the moral of the story, let Bezos not only into your heart but your house?
I think we already have. Amazon is an interesting machine. I've gotten just a couple of small peeks behind the curtain. a few times, like doing interviews or talking to audience members or getting a tour of one of their data centers off the record. And every time I have to completely reframe what I think of as scale and how far a company is willing to go to accomplish things. I think it's a weird thing. I get these weird glimpses into Amazon. I go, holy shit, this is the company we should all be thinking and talking about. Like we talk about Microsoft and we talk about Apple, but it's really Amazon. And yeah. Anyways, that's just. But that's an old soapbox of mine. I don't have to get on. I think Coder Radio audience is probably familiar with that. What do you think about AI? You think it's been overhyped? Do you think it's been oversold? That's the argument that's being made over on The Guardian. They write that the discourse has become unhinged around AI, and the media gets AI alarmingly wrong. And I don't know, I thought maybe we'd talk about this here for a moment. So first, I will mention Linux Academy, linuxacademy.com/coders. That's the one with the S. You go there, you sign up on the Linux Academy platform, and you can learn more about Linux or any cloud platform that you might want to get into. We were just talking about AWS. They just did a big refresh on AWS Lambda. It is the best training content in the world for AWS Lambda right now. They put so much energy, time, and effort into this, and they staff up. It's part of the story that they don't really talk about very much. But when they start getting dedicated to a particular content or topic or courseware, they bring those people on as full-time employees that have a salary and benefits and an office space and are part of the team, and they are paid to become and stay experts. They bring people in like from Amazon. They've hired people directly from Amazon. They've hired people from Rackspace. They've hired people directly from Microsoft, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They go to experts, they bring them on and make them part of the team, and that's a massive investment. And then they're there to invest in that content, to make the best AWS content, to make the best Azure content, to make sure that the Linux essential stuff is top notch. That's their whole job. And that's part of your value. That's just part of the value with the Linux Academy subscription. So go to linuxacademy.com/coders to sign up for a free 7-day trial and support the show. linuxacademy.com/coders. So they say that we've been talking about AI wrong fundamentally for decades, and that we've just been getting it wrong and hyping it up, that we've built up these massive expectations, and that it's time to tamp it all down, and that we need to rehinge the conversation around AI, and that there needs to be closer interaction between journalists and researchers, so that way the media can write about it more appropriately, and that we should reconsider what we think of as AI. Like Google search is AI, and Spotify search is AI. It's not just things that are actually computing decisions or winning games or doing image recognition, but it's a much broader thing. AI is any kind of assistive, intelligent technology, they say. And they say that we need to stop writing about big, scary AI stories, and they point to Fast Company's story that went viral and spread across the internet that got a bunch of other publications going nuts, that Facebook engineers panicked and pulled the plug on an AI bot that they developed in their own language. It was completely misinterpreted, and the stories they write nearly resembled the plot of a Terminator movie, when reality was much, much more boring, and that all the media coverage was just really sensationalized crap. It was machine learning that had learned the wrong stuff. And that's really all it was, and that happens when you're doing this kind of stuff. What do you think about this? Is this conversation detrimentive, the current level of discourse around AI, or does it create the space for a market that then creates the products that live up to the hope?
So it's funny, because I've obviously, with Alice and with everything we're doing at the Mad Botter, although we're doing a lot of aviation stuff right now, but I have been giving a lot of thought to this, and I'm actually reading a book called The Fourth Age by a guy named Byron Reese. I put a link in the chat room. And it's all about this, right? Like possible outcomes of robotics and AI. I don't even know if I know what the word AI means anymore. Because like you described, Spotify was one of your...
Yeah, that was one of their examples, yeah.
So they actually really do have, not in search, but in their recommendation system, like some pretty sophisticated machine learning going on.
Yeah, that's fair.
But is machine learning AI?
It seems like the lines have gotten awfully blurred, huh?
Right. Is it part of it? Is it a subset of it?
Yeah.
I don't like, so almost the same with blockchain. I see a lot of basically like companies or startups trying to claim that things we've been doing for a long time, like, doing like, I don't know if you remember, there used to be an open source package called Solar, which enabled you to do large database searches and fun stuff like that. I know of several companies who are basically using that, which has been around forever, and calling it AI.
Yeah.
Which I am actually not one of, like, I think AI is actually more hype than blockchain. I think it's blockchain, I don't get it, but it works, right? Like, you can tell that there is a functional technology there. I mean, what AI products actually work the way you would like them to? I mean, there are some things in labs. What's that robot's name? Sophia, I think.
Yeah. Do you remember the Dr. Sebastio or whatever it was?
Yeah.
Does this ring a bell at all? It's an old DOS program.
Yeah.
I should, you know what I should do is I should go get a clip of it because that was so classic. Do you remember that thing? Like that old, like, and that is described, I was looking it up. They described that as an artificial intelligence speech synthesis program that was released in the late 1990s, late 1991 by Creative Labs for all MS-DOS based systems. And it was really a design of speech. It was really an example of speech synthesis and all of that synthesis. But it was very much considered to be AI. It was AI. I think, I wonder if this, let's see. Let's take a rando clip of it and let's see what happens.
Dr. Spateful, by Creative Labs. Please enter your name.
Yeah, remember this?
C H E
Oh,
A
wow.
H O V. Hello, Shahab. My name is Dr. Spateful. I am here to help you. Say whatever is in your mind freely. Our conversation will be kept in strict confidence. Memory contents will be wiped off after you leave. So, tell me about your problems.
And then you would give it a series of responses, and it would just sort of,
have to be so polite.
yeah, you could say thank you, and then he'd say, like, you don't have to be super polite. Like, he would give you different responses. You could swear at him.
Concerned about my help, though.
So and he would try to be clever and give you different responses. So we've been really kind of hyping this for a really long time because that came out in 91, and you can find references to artificial intelligence back to the early 80s and probably before that, but that's what I found. So I do wonder if maybe we should dial it down a bit, and just like we need like a bubble popper, just like people came up with the cloud is just another name for other people's computers, which it kind of immediately is a hype deflator. We need that same kind of thing for AI, like a go-to slogan that sort of just immediately deflates the hype. I think that would be useful. Hey, before we run, I know we kind of ran out of time because we were going to do a quickie, but you teased last week, and I wanted to talk about it this week, is you've been spending some time in Qt Creator, and I just wanted to give you a little space to talk about that because I've heard really good things, and I've heard that it's a pretty solid environment. You know, it's a cross-platform integrated development environment for writing Qt applications. I've heard a lot of good things. So I'd love to hear your a quick take on it.
Yeah, we'll probably do more on this next week. But I have this thing I'm hoping to come out with in the fall. That is basically an application that needs to run on Windows and Linux, not Mac, although it certainly theoretically could. And I started off like taking a look at things like Platform Uno, UWP, although I quickly dropped UWP because obviously not going to run on Linux. Xamarin, again, wouldn't run on Linux, but the thing has evolved, and I got into the space of this piece of software has to integrate with some pretty low-level components. They're actually avionics components. And all of the stuff basically I'm using, I think we've mentioned it before, ZMQ, which is a basically communication protocol, is like C-based, right? And I don't know, I'm an old man. I kind of miss like not using high-level languages, although I know C++ is a high-level language. So I took a flyer and I downloaded Qt Creator, and we're going with that. It's pretty good. Now there's some things. Honestly, the worst thing about Qt seems to be the IDE. If you're used to like a JetBrains like IDE, they have one called Sea Lion for C and C++. It is a little lacking, but I found overall the development experience is pretty good. And this is going to sound a little crazy, but in its simplicity, right, that it's just C++, it's, it looks in your user/include headers, whatever, on your Unix system. It's nice to not have quite the level of abstraction that I've been working in recently, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I like that. So you'll maybe share a little more? Maybe share a little more maybe next week?
More next week.
Very good. Well, I'll give it a look too. I'm curious. So very teasy of you, Mr. Dominic. Very, very teasy of you. Well, I hope your travels go well, and I hope the rig arrives in time for those travels, because that's obviously a bit of a, it sounds like if you're not getting your packages, it could be a bit of a problem. But in the meantime, tell folks where they can get more Michael Dominic in their life.
Follow @Dumanuku on Twitter.
I like it. In fact, I'm going to copy and say follow @Chris Elias. First, go get the Dominuku. Go get him. Just put him in your follow list. Maybe just set as your homepage. And then once you're done, once you have @Dumanuku in your Twitter feed, maybe consider adding a little Chris Lass in your life. And if you got some room, I mean, I don't know how busy your feed is, but we also got @Jupiter Signal. I'm just saying. Could be pretty great. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in this week's episode of the Coder Radio program. Links to stuff we talked about over at coder.show/320. And you can find our live time at jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar, irc.geekshed.net for our chat room. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Coder Radio program. And I think there's a pretty good chance we'll see you right back here next week.